His call sign's Taskmaster. He controls the Red Room. They're manipulated, fully conscious, but no choices.
I should have come back for you.
How many others are there? Enough.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian, and we are here to talk about, as the title suggests, the 24th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is, of course, Black Widow. Of course, the movie came out in theaters and on Disney Plus's Premiere Access feature. It is set after the events of Captain America Civil War, and yes, there is a post-credit scene. This will be a spoiler-filled kind of thought process, not necessarily a review. It's really more just, things that stood out to me and my thoughts about the movie. So it is spoiler-filled. So if you haven't seen it yet, or you don't care about spoilers, I guess you can stick around. But yeah, this is my thing about that. Let's first obviously talk about the elephant in the room, and that is that yes, this movie is a little too late. Because obviously we know that Natasha is dead, and if anyone held out hope that maybe she wasn't dead, that maybe, she was still alive, or, that crazy theory that it was actually Yelena with plastic surgery of Natasha's face. And Endgame, yes, that is something I read online when the Black Widow trailer dropped. No, that post-credit scene of Yelena, of course, played by Florence Pugh, visiting Natasha's grave pretty much showed that Natasha is dead and she's staying that way, which honestly should probably be the case, because then her sacrifice wouldn't have meant anything and wouldn't have been, as impactful as it was. And yeah, it's a comic book movie and people don't necessarily stay dead, Bucky and Loki various times. I was thought about someone else and I can't remember who it was now, but pretty much, they're pretty much done with Natasha Romanoff being Black Widow. Yelena, on the other hand, technically she was a widow, and again, that post-credit scene showed that she was working with Julie Louis-Dreyfus' character, Val, as she likes to call herself, and we know that she is going to appear in some way, shape, or form in the Hawkeye series that I believe finished filming. So Yelena is here to stay, and she could, for all intent and purposes, be our new Black Widow in the MCU, or just be her own character, which would be fine nonetheless. And Val coming in, if I remember correctly, this was supposed to be her introduction, because, Black Widow was supposed to come out technically first before Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or they were supposed to coincide together originally, and obviously that didn't happen because of COVID and everything. So, but knowing who she kind of is because of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then seeing her at the end of that, at the end of Black Widow, it was a nice, tie-in to not only the future of Yelena in the MCU, but also, of course, the future of the Disney Plus series, again, with Hawkeye being, not the next one, but, because I think the next one's, What If, which just dropped the trailer, last week, and that looks good. That looks really good. But yeah. So there's that. That is the elephant in the room, obviously. That, this not being an origin movie, which was nice, but it's also a prequel to the events that we already know what happened. So that's what happens when you play the prequel game to something that we already know. You run into that, that false sense of danger, because we know Natasha's not going to die, but, putting her in danger still, is a dramatic effect for a movie, but we already know she's already dead. So there is also that, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So let's talk about some pros. I'm going to jump around a little bit with pros and stuff, just because the way I wrote kind of my outline, it's all over the place. But my pros, obviously, the first one we just mentioned, and I've been talking about a lot, Florence Pugh as Yelena. Pugh has already proven herself to be a name that people should remember. And if you don't know her name by now, you should. From the first thing that really put her name in Hollywood, which was Lady Macbeth, which I have not watched yet, but I heard very good things, and I heard good things about Pugh in that movie. That's actually when I first started hearing her name, when that movie came out, but I never watched it. And it has nothing to do with Shakespeare. It's go ahead and give it a watch. From the synopsis that I read, it sounds like it's good. You should give it a watch anyway. But from that to Outlaw King, which is the Netflix movie, from Fighting With My Family, which was the thing that started really getting her name out there to households, to, of course, Midsommar, which, got her name recognized by a completely different set of movie fans, to, of course, Little Women, which put her out there, to the other set of movie fans out there that don't, watch Midsommar or Fighting with My Family. And now we have Black Widow, which introduces her to pretty much everybody, because, the Marvel movies are pretty much for everybody who cares to watch them anyway. So, but as Yelena, she does a really good job. And, she is the younger, quote unquote, sister, who, has had her own life. She's, even though she was controlled by the Widow program. And then here comes the big sister, quote unquote, big sister. And they start bickering and making fun of each other. And the chemistry between Pugh and Scarlett Johansson is really great. And you can tell they had a lot of fun working together. And in particular, when they're talking about the vest, Yelena's vest, which I thought was probably one of the better of the, conversations they were having. And yes, that is the vest that Natasha is wearing in Infinity War. I think a lot of people noticed that when the Black Widow trailer came out, that Yelena was wearing the vest that Natasha wears, and people were already saying that, oh, Yelena's gonna die in this movie, and maybe she did in earlier drafts of the script, who knows? But people were like making speculations of why she has the vest and stuff like that. So, but at the end, it shows that Yelena just gave it to Natasha because Natasha. Right, that sound weird. To Natasha, oh my god, I did it again. To Natasha, because she knew that she was jealous of the vest. So Pugh's great. She pretty much steals the movie overall. And then the poser aspect too was really funny. I thought that was really cool. And then she does the pose at the end, and she was like, "Oh, that just feels weird." I like that. That was really cool. Sticking with the family, we'll just stick with the family here a little bit. David Harbour, who is always reliable in anything that he does, whether he's playing a smarmy guy, whether he's playing the bad guy, whether he's playing a guy with his own motives. David Harbour is always reliable in everything he does, and he's reliable here as Alexei, aka the Red Guardian, who is, for those who don't know, they touch upon it in the movie, but for those who don't know, he is the Russian answer to Captain America. Although here in the movie, he's almost kind of made of a joke amongst the people, even a little full of himself a little bit, like the prison scene when he's telling people that he fought Captain America in the 80s, and the guy, even though he was still frozen in the ice, and the guy was like, he was still in the ice in the 80s. And of course, he does his thing. So I kind of like they went that route, that he wasn't, just, like the big, typical kind of Russian guy. I kind of like that they made him kind of a little bit of a goof and kind of full of himself, because he was the Russian answer to Captain America, and he was, from the looks of it, the only real Russian answer to Captain America, probably the only one that survived the super soldier serum. That said, the last family member here, as much as I love Rachel Weisz, and I do, her Melina kind of gets the short end of the stick, at least in terms of the family. She has the less amount of screen time. I kind of wish they gave her a little bit more to do, but don't get me wrong, what she does and what she has and what she's given, she's great. I just wish that she had a little bit more. But we do find out, obviously, in the movie, that she is responsible for, the widows being so subservient, especially after Natasha, left, by changing their chemical balance or something along those lines. I forgot the whatever the actual wording and science was behind it. But that does add an extra layer to everything that's going on. And with Yelena, because that scene at the dinner table, when they all finally get back together, that was rough. When she's Melina gushing over her work and kind of patting herself on the back, it cuts to Yelena, and she's just fighting back whatever she has to say until she's, had enough. And you're, as an audience member, you're like, Melina, just shut up, stop talking. You're hurting, your daughter, and that adds to the whole family dynamic, because even though they were this put together family, Yelena, because she was the youngest, of them all, it felt real to her. And she says it multiple times, that it was real to her, that Natasha, Alexei, and Melina were her family, and the only real family that she knew. And that, that's painful to hear that and to see that. And you see how it affects her. It doesn't affect, and you see how later, seeing how Yelena was affected by it, it starts, to affect everyone else, because Melina was like, no, it's just a job, but you really don't see it because she saved the photo album that she told a young Natasha to leave behind at the beginning of the movie. And Alexei, starts singing, American Pie to Yelena when she's trying to, comfort her after, she walked out from the table before they get, obviously taken. So I like that. I like the whole family dynamic, the kind of whole messed up family dynamic of it all, which was great. And that opening credits scene, man, the opening scene when, they're escaping S.H.I.E.L.D., that's a great scene. But that montage they put together of the widows and everything with that cover by Nirvana, that was moody as hell. And I was not expecting, I was talking to a few friends, that was very moody, and I was not expecting that. And it just fits so well to what they were, imposing behind it and everything else. I was not expecting that from a Marvel movie, from a Black Widow movie. It just makes you know that this movie hits a little different, and right from the beginning. So I thought that was really good. Okay, let's stick with the family just a little bit, because I put this in my notes or in my little outline here, and I want to get a little nerdy here, because we've talked about a little bit on what people speculated about, that maybe Yelena was going to die, maybe Yelena was actually Natasha in Endgame. But because this movie comes out after Endgame, we know everything that happens to Natasha. But there is this thing where the writers in Endgame and the writers of Black Widow are painted into this corner, because Natasha tells Steve that in Endgame that the Avengers were her only real family, and that she never had another one. Obviously, that's not true, because we've seen this, and it made it a little bit more confusing, because at the end, of Black Widow, she's telling her supply guy Mason, played by O.T. Fabenley, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, that I now have two families, but I have to go take care of the other one because the other one's messed up. She's talking about the Avengers. So you want to get a little nerdy here. That's obviously before, the decimation or the blimp or whatever you want to call it. So did Yelena, Melina, and Alexei get blimped away? And that's why Natasha's just like so over it and done with everything in Endgame? Because they're away, and it just makes her more of a tragic character, because I don't have any family anymore. They got blimped away. So it's a little dark. It gets a little dark, and we'll talk a little bit more about why this movie is a little bit more darker than we realize in hindsight with everything else that's happened in the MCU. But let's move on, and we'll get to that in a second. I want to talk about the action, because the action in this movie is actually pretty good. I think the standout for me is the whole Budapest section, or Budapest, depending on how you want to take that whole scene, which was a very nice bit, by the way. Yelena and Natasha facing off, pretty brutal. I wish it was a little longer, just to kind of showcase Yelena's fighting skill, and Natasha. We've seen Natasha's fighting skill, but to show off a little bit more of Yelena in her fighting ability, I think that would have been really cool. And then the chase/escape from Taskmaster through the streets was pretty cool. We'll talk about Taskmaster right now. All right. And while we're at it, let's talk about the Budapest, because we've heard a lot about Budapest. I'm just going to say Budapest. And the connection between Black Widow and Hawkeye. But we never knew what really happened. And in the Avengers, it kind of makes it sound like it's a humorous moment. It's like, oh, just like Budapest. And Hawkeye's like, you and I remember Budapest very differently. Done for humor, right? Obviously, because they're fighting aliens and they're shooting and they're behind a car. No. No, because the real Budapest situation is dark. We now know that Budapest was pretty much Natasha's way into getting into S.H.I.E.L.D. She failed her mission because Dreykov, played by Ray Winstone, survived and burned her daughter, although she assumed that she killed her, which was not the case. Yeah, but that reveal of her killing a kid, that was like, that changes that whole scene overall. I don't know. And it wasn't like it was, they were overthrowing some dictator or we were fighting off an army. No, it was like we tried to kill the guy that was in charge of the Red Rooms, and I accidentally blew up his daughter and, failed to kill him. But I got into S.H.I.E.L.D. No, that's dark. And of course that leads to Taskmaster, because a lot of people a lot of people have been talking about Taskmaster and how the character was portrayed in the movie. They did change the character a little bit. In the comics, it's a man who actually worked with S.H.I.E.L.D. at one point before becoming a mercenary for hire. They did keep his ability, if you want to call it that, that he can, he has like a I think they have an actual term for it in the comics, like phonogenic it wasn't phonogenic memory, it was something else in the comics at least, but it's kind of like it, but it is kind of like that. You even seen in the movie that he's studying the moveset of every superhero, and he learns it, and he can use it against them because he just memorizes it all, and he can keep it in his head. But Taskmaster in Black Widow, as like I mentioned before, it's a grown up Antonia, because she survives the bombing somehow, and her father kept her alive by putting a chip in the back of her neck and basically made her his own killing machine. And in terms of the story that the movie's trying to tell and what it was doing and what it was making, this version of Taskmaster makes sense for the movie. The essence of the character is still there. The Taskmaster is still this very lethal killing machine that is capable of taking out anybody. Black Widow, Yelena, Melina, Alexei, a super soldier, basically. So the essence of Taskmaster is there. And, it's just not the Taskmaster that everyone knows from the comics and that people love. But in terms of the movie and the tone and the story it's trying to say, this Taskmaster makes some kind of sense, because Dreykov is a scumbag in the movie. He uses, he is stealing all these, young girls and making them widows, or black widows. And he even uses his daughter for it, and he's just this overall scumbag that, you can't wait to watch get killed. And his death's kind of lackluster. He dies in a plane plane blown up. All right, whatever. But you want a scumbag character, you get Ray Winstone, and he does, what he's given very well. So let's talk about a little bit of the cons. I don't have too much to say about the movie. I honestly don't, because overall I think it's fine. It's good overall, to be honest. But I guess the only other knock that I would say is Mason, the guy I mentioned earlier, the guy that gives Natasha, her equipment and everything. He's kind of a nothing character. He kind of just moves the movie along. It kind of just gives Natasha this, she still has her connections, and she still has a friend out there. Maybe a little bit of a hint of a romance, but obviously doesn't go anywhere, and it won't go anywhere now. But there is that. It's also another character that they introduced to the world, so they want to bring him back and maybe connect him to Yelena. That'd be nice, but for the most part, he's just kind of a nothing character. So the only real con, I guess you can say, it's probably more of a criticism, and it's a valid one, and it's one that everyone was making even before the movie came out. And I mentioned it earlier at the beginning. This movie is a little too late. We know Natasha's fate. Not that I think they would have killed her in her own first solo movie, like I mentioned earlier, but still, had they actually released this before Endgame, or even after Civil War, or even before or after Infinity War, I guess, before Endgame would be Infinity War, but you know what I meant, then it would have been fine. Because, we wouldn't have this criticism of like, oh, well, she's dead. But, after Endgame, we had, some other movies. It came out now. And obviously it got delayed because of COVID and stuff as well. That said, though, it shouldn't give you an excuse to say the movie's bad. And it shouldn't, or that you shouldn't watch it or anything like that. Because if you just make that assumption that, oh, we already know she's dead, well, I'm not going to go watch it. Who cares? Like, no. Like, you wanted a Black Widow movie. Like, I've wanted a Black Widow movie for a long time, and we finally have it. Yeah, we know her fate, but it also gave us kind of a backdoor into Yelena, who will probably take over the mantle of Black Widow and will be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for some time. Everyone was impressed with Florence Pugh. There was those reports that everyone was impressed with her and that she's here to stay, which is why they gave her the role in Hawkeye. And which is why she'll probably be in whatever they end up doing with Val, and probably another, Disney Plus show, or maybe even a movie. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But just, to say like, oh, she's dead, who cares? Like, no. You're just being stupid. I'm sorry, but you are. Overall, like I mentioned, I don't have too much to say. I didn't know what to expect from Black Widow, to be honest with you. I had no expectations. for the movie whatsoever. I mean, other than, it was a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and that was pretty much it. And I get to see Black Widow, I get to see Florence Pugh, I get to see this great cast, honestly, of people come in. I didn't really have any expectations. I didn't know what to expect from Black Widow. And I don't know where it ranks in my Marvel Cinematic Universe rankings. I would venture to say it's probably on the top half, but I probably would have to watch it again and think about it a little bit more. I actually don't know where I have my rankings. I know I have it somewhere on my computer. I just don't know where. Maybe that's a whole other podcast. But again, too little too late for a Black Widow movie, but at least we finally got one. And it wasn't that bad. It's enjoyable. It really is. The action's good. The cast is great. It holds together. Florence Pugh steals the movie. We get to see Scarlett Johansson one more time as Black Widow, which is great. It opens up the other side of the MCU if they want to keep going with the Widow program, if they want to keep going with Yelena, if they want to bring back, Alexei and Melina at some point. I don't really have anything bad to say other than the criticism that, this movie's a little late to the game. Black Widow should have been the first, should have gotten her own movie. Then it didn't even have to be an origin movie. It could have been this. It could have been this, her trying to stop the Widow program. Which that whole thing with the gas that, renders the chemical imbalance thing, that it makes them, that breaks them free from that. I thought that was kind of cool. I didn't mind that. I wish there was a little bit, it was almost kind of like a MacGuffin, because you kind of didn't really go anywhere. The movie wasn't really about that. It was really about the family. It was really about Natasha, and Yelena and everybody else. So, I mean, that was fine. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really have anything really bad to say about the movie. I don't really have anything negative to say about the movie. I thought it was good. I thought it was good. I did. I don't know where I would rank it, but that would have to be something I have to look at. But it would be on the top half. It wouldn't be on the bottom half, really, to say that. So yeah, that's all I have written down that I can think of. Obviously, there'll probably be some more stuff that I'll think of later on. But I'd recommend it, guys. I really would. Rating wise, I'd probably give it a solid 4. Somewhere within solid 4, maybe like a 4.3. That doesn't make any sense. I'll just give it a 4. Solid 4 out of 5 for me. Yeah, that's how I would probably give it. Again, I don't really have anything negative to say. Well, that's a good movie. It's good. And it's not because it's the Marvel movie. I'm a Marvel shill. No, I'm not getting paid by Marvel to do these good, to give reviews. No, that's dumb. Honestly, if you believe that. That's what it is. That's what I think about it. That's what I do. That was my honest opinion of it. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say. Obviously, if anything, I can think of comes up, or if anything you want to talk about, obviously, you can come find me and talk about the movie all you want. All the social medias are down below. So if you want to, again, talk about the movie, Instagram and Twitter is down there. What else is down there? Links to everything else. Personal pages, depending on where you're listening to the podcast. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. Yeah, that's it. I don't know what else. I'm thrown off by something here in front of me. I apologize for that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast for this one, the review, obviously, of Black Widow. Let me know what you thought if you watched it already. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What did you like the most about it? What didn't you like the most about it? I'd love to hear from you guys, interact with you guys, and talk to you about this movie, because obviously it's a Marvel movie. We want to talk about it. It's a movie in general. We just want to talk about stuff. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys hopefully at the end of the week for the weekly roundup of news podcast. Until then, everybody, stay safe, enjoy yourselves, have a good week, and go watch some movies.
Okay, you got a plan, or shall I just stay duck and cover?
My plan was to drive us away.
Well, your plan sucks.